The first part of the treatment is the a temporal rock, and what I like.
This one?
No, you're fine. Okay. Just going to tune in and see what's going on inside here. Just on some level. You never know for sure. Okay, so the finger position for this first hold is fairly specific, so we'll pay attention to that. And you take your third finger and you kind of put it in your ear like earplug. So now she can't hear the rest of the demo. You can hear still, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I take my fourth finger and put it on the mastoid process, and then my index finger I put right next to the tragus, which is this little flap here that you can push over your ear. And then I come up until I contact the bottom of the zygoma, like that. And there, you can see that. So, I don't know if you can see, but her right side's lower than her left side. Yeah, if you look down from the top, I think, feels like it anyway. So anyway, and then my thumbs come in to the top of the zygomatic arch. Okay, so I'm kind of almost pinching it here. And so one class I took, they said you actually do pinch it and you put all this force and push the temporal bone around, you know. But again, that's more regular kind of osteopathic manipulation. We're just very light forces to make contact with it, to listen to it. And then I tune in and I see what's going on with the cranial rhythm. Now if you also place the palms of your hands up on the parietal bones, then the long axis of your middle finger is about the exact same as the axis of rotation of the temporal bones. And so what you should feel is that you should feel it kind of rotating around that finger like that. Okay? Flexion, extension. So this pretty much stays the same, you know. You get flexion, extend. That's what you should feel if everything's balanced. Now if you come in too straight, you're not going to be on the axis of rotation, so you might not feel it as well. And then the zygomatic arch would go down with flexion, right? And you'd feel the squamous part swell out into your hand. And then your ring fingers are moving in and like that. So let's just see if she's got anything close to cranial rhythm here. So she's already working. So this is also an area of controversy in cranial work. The classic osteopathic model says they both go in at the same phase, you know. But if you read Milne in his liquid electric model, they're very rarely in phase with each other. But if you think about it in terms of, you know, flexion, extension, they ought to be in phase with each other. But a lot of times they're not. But generally when I treat them, I do try to leave them in phase with each other, and then they can do what they want after that. So now there's heat coming out, but she's in more of a regular cranial rhythm now. So there's different allopathic treatments you can do here. So the best treatment, I think, is when you tune in, would be, again, put little test motions in for flexion or extension and see if you could get the unwinding to happen. Again, usually when you come on, if it wants to unwind, it just starts unwinding. So you probably notice you don't have to put in the test motions that often, right? Yeah. So she is unwinding a little bit, and when they unwind, they can do all kinds of things, and they're usually not together. Okay, they're different. And then, but if you feel the need to do some real active treatment, one of the tools that they use is like let's say I follow the right temporal into flexion and I hold it there, and then I release the left temporal and would run it through a couple of flexion extension, and I'd hold it still and then run this one through. So again, that was just developed as a kind of allopathic technique to treat, and I very rarely have to do that to people. Most of the time, just unwinding and then doing the ear pole balances the temporal bones. Okay, so this one you just want to unwind until you get a good cranial rhythm. Okay, then the second technique for the ear is to, if you look at most people's ear, it's going to have a deep well here and then kind of an outer part, right? So you get this deep well here and then this outer part. So I just put my thumb in that well, and then I usually just use these, my third and fourth fingers, and just gently hold on to the ear that way to get a hold on the ear.
What is this one called?
Ear pole. So this is the second part, it's the ear pole. And then what I want to do is invite the temporal bones out along the long axis of its rotation. Okay? Now what if she's laying here like this, what would that axis look like? What would that vector look like? Okay. It's going back, right? Because they're petrous ridges. So let me show you this, and you can probably see it. So if we put Laura in the bandsaw and cut her head off, okay, so that's kind of what it would look like. So you might have to come around. So you can see it's going down because they're sitting at 45 degrees, right? And it's also going out. But if you notice, it's also going, depending on how her head is rotated, it's either going a little superiorly or a little inferiorly, right? So those are the three vectors of force. You want down, out, and then I usually kind of check to see if it wants to be pulled inferiorly or superiorly, depending on. But most people's petrous ridges would go superiorly just a little bit. So it's those three vectors. But in reality, what I usually do is put a tiny little traction in that direction, and then usually they start unwinding.
Which direction?
Down, out, and then slightly superior.
Oh, okay, all three.
So if I could, I don't know if I could, it would be, you're pulling about like that. An angle about like that. Okay? Yeah, so on this side, it would be an angle of about like that. So it's down, it's out, and slightly, for her, slightly superior. Okay? So that's the vector you're pulling at. But,
And why they say for me it's slightly superior?
because that's how it wants to go.
Okay.
So feel, so here if I pull it this way, compared to if I pull it that way,
Yes.
feel that's more of the ease, right? Yeah. And that's just the way your petrous ridges are oriented right now. They're more
Okay.
like this than like that. And obviously if you tipped your head up like that, then I would pull them down. So that's the angle right there. So by listening to the ear, you'll feel the angle you're supposed to pull it. That's the bottom line. I mean, main reason we teach this vector so we have test questions we can write. Right? Used to harass the fast ear students with those questions. So, and then you just let it unwind, and again, what you would expect So usually you'll feel it twisting and turning and pulling. It might pull it out, pull it back in, and what we're looking for is that feeling like you can just go out and out and out after it's unwound. So I'll leave that for whoever's working.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the second move for the ears, the ear pull. Okay. And Upledger developed this pretty much. I mean, he's taking credit for it. And he developed it to treat kids with autism. And he found that kids with autism have really tight tentoriums. And that oftentimes you can get that tentorium to relax, their behavior mellows for a while. It always comes back, but it would mellow for a while at least. And we see that sometimes in kids with ADHD
Mm-hmm.
and ADD, but those kids usually have more problems in their frontal lobes, in my experience, than in their tentoriums. So then the third treatment, remember the hand position we used for the CV4? Remember that? Okay, this is going to be very similar, but instead of having my thumbs together, I'm going to put my thumbs right on the mastoid processes. Okay? So my hands are crisscrossed like this, and I'm cradling the occiput, but my hands are on the mastoid processes. So, it'd be like this. Okay?
One more time?
There you go. Hands are just, you've got the occiput cradled in your hand. And so then your fingers are just down on the neck, but they're not necessarily engaging anything. Because here you want your attention to be in your thumbs. And again, what you're doing is tuning into the flexion